He was perhaps one of the greatest philosophers who ever lived, the friend of humanity, wishing for money only that he might give to the poor, a friend to animals. His heart was concerned only with the happiness of others.
He possessed a knowledge of physics and chemistry, which would have reflected undying honour on a dozen of the most eminent modern men of science.
He sings, plays the violin wonderfully, composes, is mad and not very sensible.
The most learned man ever to have set foot in my domains was without a doubt Saint-Germain. He had an encyclopedic knowledge that amazed me every time we conversed.
He is called the Count of Saint-Germain, who has been so often regarded as the myth, but who is very real and is one of those who never die.
The man who does not die.
This extraordinary man would say in an easy, assured manner that he was 300 years old, that he knew the secret of the universal medicine, that he possessed a mastery over nature.
Welcome to From the Quarries. Among the strange, mysterious beings with which the 18th century was so richly dowered, no one has commanded more universal comment and attention than the mystic who is known by the name of the Count of Saint-Germain. A hero of romance, a charlatan, a swindler, and an adventurer. Rich and varied were the names that showered freely upon him. Hated by the many, loved and reverenced by the few, time has not yet lifted the veil which screened his true mission from the vulgar spectators of the period.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's presentation, From the Quarries, an archive of Masonic lore.
The Count of Saint-Germain, a renowned figure of the Enlightenment era, occupies a central position in the annals of Western Hermeticism and the esoteric tradition. His life story, a blend of substantiated facts, conjecture, and fable, creates a tantalizing tapestry that wraps around an inscrutable core. Born into a world of burgeoning intellectual and scientific thought, Saint-Germain navigated the echelons of European nobility with a certain élan, leaving an indelible mark upon the courtly life of the 18th century. His manifold talents ranged from music and painting to politics and science, earning him the epithet, the Wonder Man of Europe. However, Saint-Germain's most notable contributions lie in his profound influence on Freemasonry, alchemy, and Rosicrucianism. As a Freemason, he was associated with many notable figures of the Masonic world, including Cagliostro and the Duke of Chartres, and was rumoured to have established a Masonic rite known as the Rite of Strict Observance. Moreover, Saint-Germain is said to have shared the stage with influential Rosicrucian figures. His philosophies reflected the core tenets of the Rosicrucian tradition, including the belief in a universal spiritual wisdom preserved by an intellectual elite, and he is often recognized as an important figure within Rosicrucian circles. In relation to alchemy, Saint-Germain's name is synonymous with the art of transmutation. Alleged to have discovered the elixir of life and the philosopher's stone, he was often touted as a master alchemist who could transmute base metals into gold. Whether this was literal or symbolic alchemy, or both, remains a matter of ongoing debate, but his impact on the tradition is undeniable. While the Count of Saint-Germain's birth and lineage remain contentious, certain threads within historical narratives provide a compelling starting point for investigation. Numerous accounts propose that Saint-Germain was born towards the close of the 17th century, with the period between 1690 and 1710 being the most frequently cited. Yet, solidifying a precise birth year or tracing a specific lineage remains elusive due to the Count's mysterious persona and knack for maintaining ambiguity around his origins. One of the more persuasive theories holds that Saint-Germain was the son of Francis II Rakoczki, Prince of Transylvania, potentially born to a secret marriage. This speculation is reinforced by Isabel Cooper Oakley, a historian and theosophist, in her book The Comte de St, The Secret of Kings. This would imply that Saint-Germain was not only of noble birth, but also had potential ties to the world of European politics and power from an early age. Alternatively, some suggest Saint-Germain could have been of Portuguese or Spanish origin, while yet others point to a Persian lineage. The Count's linguistic proficiency supports these theories. Reports indicate that he was multilingual, demonstrating fluency in French, English, Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, German, and many other languages. Moreover, his detailed knowledge of history and customs of various countries implies a deep, first-hand familiarity with diverse cultures. Saint-Germain's early life, much like his birth, is enshrouded in mystery. Some accounts suggest that he spent his youth studying in Italy under the last of the Medici, Jean Gaston, who supposedly provided him with an extensive education. However, these accounts, like many regarding Saint-Germain, are difficult to corroborate definitively, due to the Count's tendency to maintain an air of mystery around his personal history. The Count of Saint-Germain made his first notable appearance on the European stage in the mid-18th century, as a mysterious figure within the sophisticated court of Louis XV of France. His charm, wit, and expansive knowledge endeared him to the influential figures at court, including Madame de Pompadour, the king's influential mistress. His broad spectrum of expertise was remarkable, spanning areas from history and the arts to the sciences. However, it was his purported knowledge of alchemy that was particularly fascinating. Saint-Germain was known to claim that he could transmute base metals into gold, a claim which further embellished his aura of mystery and intrigue. While this assertion remains unproven, it underscored his reputation as a man of enigmatic talents and knowledge. In 1745, Saint-Germain travelled to England, where his activities suggest ties to Freemasonry. During this period, records indicate his attendance at meetings of the Premier Grand Lodge of England, the first Freemasonic Grand Lodge. While the extent and nature of his involvement with this group are uncertain, these records do lend credence to the notion that Saint-Germain was involved, in some capacity, with Freemasonry. Saint-Germain's journey also led him to Vienna, where his musical talent, specifically his skill as a violinist, was lauded by his contemporaries. His compositions and performances are noted in the writings of several individuals of the period. This acclaim served to amplify the enigma of his persona, portraying him not only as an intellectual and an alchemist, but also as a gifted artist. Saint-Germain's spiritual teachings were a rich fusion of various esoteric traditions, drawing from alchemy, Kabbalah, and Rosicrucianism, and reflecting the broad spectrum of the Hermetic tradition. Central to this spiritual doctrine was the concept of Prisca Theologica, an idea that traces its roots to the Renaissance period. This concept posits a single, true theology or philosophy that threads its way through all religions, considered to be of divine origin and passed down through a succession of ancient philosophers. In Saint-Germain's teachings, the Prisca Theologica served as a philosophical foundation for his approach to spiritual alchemy. He proposed alchemy as a transformative process, not merely a method for transmuting base metals into gold, but a metaphorical pathway for refining the human soul. His alchemical practices resonated with the Rosicrucian emphasis on inner alchemy, a process of personal spiritual transformation. One of the most enduring aspects of Saint-Germain's legend was his supposed immortality. Discussions on this topic were often tied to the alchemical philosopher's stone, a symbol of ultimate wisdom and enlightenment in spiritual alchemy. It was interpreted in many alchemical texts not as a literal key to physical immortality, but as a metaphorical tool for spiritual transformation and illumination. While these spiritual teachings contributed to the enigma of Saint-Germain, they also firmly established him within the intellectual currents of the Hermetic tradition, offering a unique lens through which to view the spiritual transformation and the pursuit of divine wisdom. The death of Louis XV in 1774 heralded a decline in Saint-Germain's influence within the French court. Subsequently, he relocated to Germany, where he spent his remaining years. His death was reported in 1784 from the court of Prince Charles of Hesse-Kassel, a renowned figure in alchemical circles who hosted Saint-Germain in his final years. However, the enigmatic Count's demise did not signify the end of his narrative. Contrary to the announcement of his death, reports of Saint-Germain's appearance flourished. There were rumours of meetings with Napoleon Bonaparte and sightings at Masonic congresses, all of which served to fuel the legend of his immortality. Posthumously, Saint-Germain's influence persisted, rippling through various occult societies. His teachings, emblematic of his broader philosophy, significantly influenced esoteric circles. In Rosicrucian circles, Saint-Germain's teachings integrated seamlessly into their spiritual framework, becoming a crucial element of their understanding of personal development and spiritual growth. Furthermore, in the 19th and 20th centuries, Saint-Germain was adopted as a central spiritual figure by several new religious movements. The Theosophical Society, founded by Helena Blavatsky, and the I Am movement, founded by Guy and Edna Ballard, considered him an ascended master, a being who had achieved a high degree of spiritual evolution and was a custodian of ancient wisdom. Saint-Germain's legacy embodied in his spiritual teachings continues to inform and inspire various esoteric traditions, testifying to his enduring influence. Saint-Germain's reputation for immortality comes from several sources, including his own insinuations, accounts from his contemporaries, and posthumous sightings. Saint-Germain often subtly hinted at his advanced age. In his discussion with courtiers, he would casually remark about events that happened long before his apparent age would allow. For instance, one famous anecdote involves a conversation with Madame de Pompadour, mistress of King Louis XV. He casually stated that he had known Cleopatra and commented on her beauty and charm in a manner that suggested a personal encounter. In another instance, he claimed to have dined with the famous philosopher Voltaire, who, impressed by his wealth of knowledge, reportedly quipped that the Count must be a man of at least 300 years of age. Contemporaries of Saint-Germain often noted that his appearance did not change significantly over the years. For instance, French philosopher and encyclopedist Denis Diderot, after meeting Saint-Germain in 1763, met him again in 1777 and commented that he hadn't aged a day. This apparent defiance of the natural aging process fueled rumours of his immortality. Despite reports of his death in 1784, there have been numerous accounts of Saint-Germain's appearances well into the 19th and 20th centuries. The most famous of these is from the Countess d'Adhémar, who claimed to have seen him in 1789 during the French Revolution, then again in 1815 and 1820. Each time he supposedly warned her about upcoming political events. The Countess wrote about these encounters in her memoirs, stating each time that he looked to be a man no older than his mid-40s. Saint-Germain's association with alchemy, particularly the concept of the elixir of life, played a significant role in the tales of his immortality. He was rumoured to have an extraordinary knowledge of the alchemical process, and was said to possess the elixir of life, a substance that could grant immortality or at least prolonged life. This was supported by anecdotes of his consistent youthful appearance and his claims of having lived for centuries. In the late 19th and 20th centuries, the Theosophical Society and later the I Am movement and other ascended master teachings considered Saint-Germain as an ascended master, a spiritually enlightened being who had risen above the cycle of reincarnation. They believed that Saint-Germain was not only physically immortal, but that he was also a spiritual guide for humanity, thus further entrenching his reputation for immortality. One of the earliest reported sightings of Saint-Germain comes from the memoirs of Albert Van Dam. In his work titled An Englishman in Paris, Van Dam recounts a meeting in 1835 with a man who went by the name of Major Fraser. He describes Fraser as a remarkable man who played the piano brilliantly, spoke many languages fluently, and had seemingly not aged in over half a century. Van Dam later wrote that he found out that this man was none other than the Count of Saint-Germain. Another account comes from Madame de Genlis, who claimed to have met Saint-Germain in Vienna in 1821. Interestingly, she noted that he looked to be a man no older than his mid-40s, which would have been consistent with his appearance at the time of his death, nearly 4 decades earlier. In 1902, Annie Besant, a prominent theosophist, reported meeting the Count at the Theosophical Convention in Paris. According to her, he identified himself by his most renowned name, Saint-Germain, and he looked like a man in his prime. Arguably, one of the most controversial sightings occurred in the early 20th century, when a man named Jacques Saint-Germain moved to New Orleans. Despite claiming to be a direct descendant of the Count, local rumours began to circulate that Jacques was, in fact, the Count himself, due to his odd behaviour, lavish lifestyle, and ageless appearance. A group known as the I Am activity, founded by Guy Ballard in the 1930s, claimed that Ballard met the Count of Saint-Germain on the slopes of Mount Shasta, California. According to Ballard, the Count entrusted him with a new religious teaching, which Ballard then disseminated as the leader of the I Am activity. The French philosopher and writer Voltaire, known for his wit and skepticism, reportedly referred to Saint-Germain as the Wonder Man, asserting that he was a man who never dies and who knows everything. This statement, although it might be drenched in irony, became one of the earliest and most prominent anecdotes that fed the legend of the Count's immortality. Giacomo Casanova mentioned in his diary an encounter with Saint-Germain in Paris in 1760. When they met again in 1774 in Louis XV's court, Casanova noted that Saint-Germain looked precisely the same as he had 14 years earlier, suggesting that he hadn't aged. After reports of Saint-Germain's death in 1784, Prince Karl of Hesse-Kassel, with whom Saint-Germain lived during his last years, suggested in his letters that the Count had faked his death, further fueling rumours of his immortality. In the mid-20th century, esoteric scholar Manly P. Hall mentioned an unnamed Frenchman who claimed to have met Saint-Germain in Paris in 1939. According to the Frenchman, Saint-Germain had not aged since they first met in 1896. The Count of Saint-Germain was reputedly an immensely wealthy man, a fact which, alongside his charisma, wit, and erudition, made him a popular figure in European high society. He was often seen adorned in lavish clothing, decorated with several precious gemstones. He once revealed a collection of 82 boxes of gems to the French official Claude Louis, who marvelled at the spectacle. Despite this apparent wealth, the sources of his fortune remain unclear. He never clarified his means of income when asked, simply stating,
"I have everything and that of the best. I have that which I need."
Some accounts suggested he was funded by the King of France, while others proposed he was supported by wealthy benefactors who appreciated his many talents. His wealth often became a topic of speculation, further complicated by his own insinuations of his ability to transmute base metals into gold. This led many to believe that his wealth was due to his mastery of alchemy. Saint-Germain's reputation as an alchemist is one of the key elements that make his character so fascinating and enigmatic. He was said to be an adept of Hermetic philosophy and an accomplished alchemist who possessed the secret of the Philosopher's Stone, a legendary substance that reputedly could turn base metals into gold and confer immortality. In his interactions with high society, Saint-Germain was known to display impressive scientific and esoteric knowledge. Casanova, the famous Italian adventurer, recalled in his memoirs that Saint-Germain showed him a small box containing a substance that he claimed could act as a transmuting agent to turn several small pieces of metal into pure gold. Saint-Germain also reputedly claimed to possess the elixir of life, a potion that bestowed longevity or even immortality, explaining his apparent lack of aging and fueling rumours of his immortality. However, it is important to note that Saint-Germain's alchemy should not be understood only in the physical sense. As a part of the broader Hermetic tradition, alchemy also had spiritual dimensions. The process of turning lead into gold could be seen as an allegory for the spiritual transformation of the self, the shift from ignorance, lead, to enlightenment, gold. There is some anecdotal evidence and some references that support the association of Saint-Germain with Freemasonry, maybe even implying that he was a Freemason himself. Reports from the mid-18th century show Saint-Germain attended meetings at the Premier Grand Lodge of England, which was then the leading Masonic institution in the world. The Count's presence at these meetings hints at a possible connection with Freemasonry, but the specific nature and extent of his involvement remain uncertain. During his time in The Hague, Saint-Germain is said to have become involved with a group known as the Freemason Society. He reportedly met with several key members of the society during his stay. This was documented by a Dutch journalist who was reporting on society activities at the time. Charles, Duke of Brunswick, a leading figure in continental Freemasonry, had a well-documented relationship with Saint-Germain. The two were known to have corresponded on numerous occasions and shared similar interests in alchemy and mysticism. The Duke once referred to Saint-Germain as a very learned and a very rare man. Anecdotal accounts suggest that Saint-Germain was present at the signing of the Treaty of Paris in 1763. While this might not seem relevant to his ties with Freemasonry, several negotiators of the treaty, including the Duke of Bedford, were known Freemasons. His presence at this critical event suggests an integration with high-ranking Masonic members. The 20th century philosopher and esoteric scholar Manly P. Hall often mentions Saint-Germain in his works. Hall asserted that Saint-Germain was deeply involved with the Masonic, Rosicrucian, and Illuminati movements of the 18th century, further corroborating the Count's ties with Freemasonry. John Robertson, a Scottish physicist and mathematician, in his book Proofs of a Conspiracy, linked Saint-Germain with Masonic conspiracy theories during the time of the French Revolution, suggesting that he had been an influential Freemason. The Rite of Strict Observance, a Masonic division founded by Baron von Hund, acknowledged a mysterious unknown superior, who some suggest was Saint-Germain. The rite itself had rituals with Rosicrucian elements, which would align with Saint-Germain's Hermetic teachings. Theosophist C.W. Leadbetter mentioned in his work that Saint-Germain was a prominent member of European Freemasonry, and was deeply involved in Masonic activities throughout the 18th century. In his seminal work, The Secret Teaching of All Ages, Manly P. Hall repeatedly mentions Saint-Germain as an important figure in Freemasonry, furthering the narrative of the Count's Masonic associations. Anthroposophist Rudolf Steiner believed that Saint-Germain had been active in Masonic circles, providing them with esoteric teachings that had a lasting impact on Masonic philosophy. A final theory is that which goes backwards, prior to the time of Saint-Germain's purported birth. This theory proposes that Saint-Germain, Francis Bacon, and William Shakespeare were the same person, and is primarily rooted in esoteric and occult circles, particularly among proponents of the Ascended Master teachings and some factions of the Theosophical Society. Saint-Germain's legendary longevity and alleged immortality, paired with his broad-ranging knowledge and diverse talents, lend themselves to these multiple identity theories. The belief in his identity as Francis Bacon is often linked to the supposition that Bacon was the actual author of Shakespeare's works, a hypothesis in literary circles known as the Baconian Theory. In this context, Saint-Germain's legendary wisdom, linguistic prowess, and supposed ability to influence historical events from behind the scenes are seen as supporting evidence for this multifaceted identity.